good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Well, I got power back, and I got internet back. So I'm back. But it's story time. You know, we had one heck of a hurricane, and why it's important for you guys to listen to my stories here is because it's going to give you an idea, and given me an idea of what it's going to be like when the system cracks up. And it's going to crack up. If war doesn't crack it up, the money's going to crack it up. And I'm going to tell you guys what. Money runs everything in the system. All the people out there, they don't work unless they get paid, especially the telecommunications companies. And they all been privatized. And so has the electrical companies that power up your grid. They're all privatized. They're all owned by the banks. Bank goes under, so does the company. And if this currency ceases to function anyway, even if the government comes in and bails them out, it doesn't. If the currency has no value, what's the point? So ultimately, that's where we're heading when the currency ceases to function. We've never had a worldwide hyperinflation before. We've had localized hyperinflations. Countries like Germany or Zimbabwe, you know. We could name a number of countries. Romania, a number of countries have had hyperinflations. And in those circumstances, when their currency ceases to function, they use an alternative currency as a means of exchange. So, that's what Germany did. That's what Zimbabwe did. Zimbabwe used the U.S. dollar. But what happens when it's the dollar? And what happens when all the other fiat currencies out there are all hyperinflating too at the same time? Never had anything like that happen. That's uncharted territory. There's no other currency to reach out to. So what happens is infrastructure ceases to function as well. Everything. When the currency is losing value at 50% daily, they can't even mark the items in the store. Nothing functions. And so this hurricane, I'll tell you, there's people down on the shore, you know, and these massive 40-foot high waves were coming in. And I heard that they were throwing boulders. Some people would say that some of the boulders that these waves were throwing were the size of toasters, and other people described them as the size of microwave ovens up over the road and across the road. And there's rogue waves, and the rogue waves were taking out whole houses, just knocking the side of the house in and smashing the house all to pieces, and then the house goes out with the rogue wave back out to sea. And there's been several people here in Nova Scotia who have been washed out to sea from these rogue waves. Whole communities, the houses have just been washed away. Now me, I was, I was lucky. I'm lucky I didn't get hurt. A window smashed in from a 95-mile-an-hour gust and blew water all inside my house. Made an awful mess. The glass can't take a 95-mile-an-hour gust directly hitting it. Bam. And that's the way the gusts were. The gusts were like, they were coming in like, it would still down. It would be quite quiet, like it would slow down, and then slow down to about 60 miles an hour or so, steady, like poof, blowing. I mean, even still, you wouldn't want to go outside in that. It'd be hard to stand up, And then a gust would come, wham! It would hit like a wham, the gusts. And they were about 95, anywhere between 80 and 95 miles an hour. The worst ones were around 95 miles an hour. Category 2 is what it was, hurricane, okay, by the time it got here. But what happened was the wind field on it spread out, so it was much larger than a normal Category 2. Because it had been a Category 4, and it had been wound up really tight, and it come unsprung a little bit, and it grew in size, but then it lowered the wind speed down. It dispersed the energy out over a wider area. So it was a monster of a storm. And the one thing I noticed was that when it knocked out the power grid, all telecommunications quit. Your phone turns into something you can only use for the data you have stored on your phone. So it's kind of like your computer when you unplug your computer from the internet. You can't use your computer for just only the data you have stored on your computer, and that's the way with your phone. And it won't make any calls out, except it says emergency only, but I'm not even sure if those work. And it says no internet access. You can't access the internet off of it. You can't access the internet off inside your house. And a lot of people here in Canada were not knowing what was going on. They didn't know. They were like in the dark. They didn't know where to go, what to do. Because telecommunications, you can't count on it when it goes down. I've learned that now. The modern telecommunications does not work in a disaster. In a really bad disaster. It does not work. It just ceases to function. And this can happen when the money goes down, too. Because the telecommunications companies, like I say, they want to get paid. And if they're not going to get paid, or they're going to get paid in a defunct currency, they can't make payroll for their employees. If their employees are dissatisfied, you're going to get inadequate service as well. So expect disruptions that could last days or weeks in telecommunications. So you don't know what's going on. Basically, how it works is, you wake up one morning, and your lights aren't on, and your phone doesn't work. And you don't know why. What happened? What the heck happened? And you're asking your neighbor, and they're like, I don't know. They're like shaking their head, I don't know either. What's going on? And everybody around the whole community, go around the whole block, your neighbors, and ask them all. Nobody knows what's going on. That's the situation you're facing. But I'm going to tell you guys, there is something that did work here. It's an old-fashioned form of communication. I say old-fashioned because it goes back all the way back into way into the last century. It was a very, very popular form of communication. Radio. You remember the old radio shows they used to have, which were very entertaining. They had Amos and Andy, and they had the Phantom, and they had all these radio operas, I'm going to tell you guys that when this crisis comes, you want to do good, open up a radio station and produce radio operas like they did way back then, because people are only going to have that form of communication. Because that's it. That's the only thing that worked. And, I was tuned into my radio trying to listen to, to find out what the news was. And I was able to get the news off of a radio. Now, what I got is I got one of these little battery-operated radios. It takes 2 AA batteries. It's got, 5 or 6 different bands on it. It's got AM, FM, and it's also got things like shortwave on there. See, I come prepared, And the batteries on it, will last, they last 5 days running it steady on 2 AA batteries. And you can't beat that, because that'll last you a long time, because, your power might be out for 6 months. Your phone, I'm going to tell you what'll happen. Your phone will be sitting on the shelf gathering dust. That radio is what's going to be giving you entertainment every night. And that's the only thing. You're not going to have any internet. You're not going to have any telephone. Because landlines, they didn't work either here. And they're all connected in now. It's all one big lump now. All of our telecommunications now is one big lump together with the power grid. Yeah, they do have battery operated for the cell phone towers and stuff. But, I mean, those batteries is like any other, probably a LiPo battery, and it just goes out after a few days. So like I tell you guys, y'all, the only thing you're going to have is your little shortwave radio, and you might not even be able to pick up your typical stations. You might have to hunt down in the shortwave to find ham operators or something that are the only guys out there that still are able to broadcast. Because, that you might have a guy down the farm someplace out in the middle of nowhere, and he's got solar panels, and he's running a ham radio off of solar panels. And, he might be the only guy out there for entertainment for you to even talk to outside your own realm of communication. That's how isolated you're going to be. Also, when it gets really bad, like it got bad here, emergency services, I mean, you can't even call them. I mean, your phone doesn't even work. Your phone battery's dead or whatever. I mean, people they run, first off, how it works is, when the crisis first starts, all these people want to know what's going on. What do? They all hop in their car, and they all drive around aimlessly. Thousands of them. That's what they did here in Nova Scotia. Drove around aimlessly. The highways had traffic jams on the highways. People trying to find out what's going on because their cell phones weren't working. They couldn't find out what's going on. So they run all their gas out. Right? Yeah, that's really smart, but that's what they'll do. Then the next thing that happens is the service stations. They're all piled into the few service stations that are open, and they drain the tanks dry. Right? And then what happens is emergency services can't get any gas either. So how are they going to get to you? Police service, same thing. Right? Now, this disaster only lasted 4 or 5 days, whatever, But what happens when it lasts a month, 2 months? Well, let's look out a little bit further. So they've all run out of gas, okay? Emergency services all run out of gas. Police has all run out of gas after about 2 weeks into a crisis like this. Massive crisis. And this is what a currency crisis will do. They all run out of gas. So you're on your own, basically. Well, after about 2 weeks goes by, what you call your friends and neighbors are hungry. And the ones that are already bad actors out there, not your friends and neighbors, but the bad actors out there are already grouping up in the mobs of them. And they're hungry. Everybody's hungry. Everybody's thirsty. They don't have their meds anymore. Need I say more? The situation we could be facing with a currency crisis? Because everything runs on money, the entire world now. And people do not, like back in the 1930s, when we had the Great Depression, people had a sense of civic pride and duty. They would get out there and they would work for their fellow man or work for their neighbors knowing they're not going to get paid. Nobody works without pay now. So what happens? How do you pay them when the currency ceases to function? Now, you might be asking yourself, how long until the currency ceases to function, Glenn? How long is this going to take before we get to that point? Well, there's a snapback thing that could happen really fast. You see, right now, the Fed is draining liquidity out of the system. And their interest rates are going up. This means less lending in the banks. This means money's drying up like crazy. Disappearing from the system. Okay? What we call money, that's actually just currency units that have been created willy-nilly. Where do you think all those currency units went? They printed like $5 trillion. Where did it all go? Well, there's big bag holders out there. They're in the money pool from the Fed. And they've got it all socked away, and they know what's going on. And they're sitting on these big piles of money. Okay? And they're watching the system get drained, and they're waiting for a fire sale and everything. And that's what'll happen. You see prices dropping everything. Nobody out there, except for these big bag holders who got billions and billions of dollars they're sitting on. Nobody else out there will have any money. And, you know, can we say disinflation? That's what's going to happen. And that's already started. Disinflation. The Fed will keep going with this until they can't. Until the system starts to crack apart. And then they'll be like, oh no, we didn't mean it. And they'll change direction. This is the snapback I'm telling you guys about. Because when they change direction like that, when these bag holders out there get the sense that they're going to change direction like that, they're going to buy and snatch everything up. I'm talking about gold and silver primarily. And then cryptos after that, and whatever they can get. Because they know ultimately where this all ends. And they're bag holding billions, and they're not going to sit there bag holding and sit on it until it's worthless. They're not that stupid. Now, there might be a few people out there who got less money and are sitting on money, sitting on a lot of cash right now. I say a lot of cash, comparatively speaking, not billions, but maybe they're sitting on a million or 100,000 or whatever. Maybe they don't know about what I'm talking about right now, the snapback. But ultimately, the Fed and the central banks will not let this system ultimately fail. And that's what it will do. It will fail in deflation. They will not let that happen. They will not let the system fully deflate. I know they're talking a big game, you know, and everything, but ultimately they're not going to let the system fail because it supports them. And so the snapback comes when they have to change direction to stop the deflation that they've caused. Then it's going to hyperinflate so fast, it's going to catch you all unawares, bag holders of cash. You get caught with that cash because this can happen extremely fast. We're going to head into this hyperinflation at a certain point. I can't tell you the day. I can't tell you the hour. But ultimately, after this, we enter into this hyperinflation. What we're going to enter into is the first stage of hyperinflation, which is called the acceleration phase. And it's probably going to last a few months. So the money starts to flow again. And it's a feel-good period. It's a period where the economy starts to function again because it's receiving the money it needs. Picture the economy like a car going down the road, you know. It's got an engine. What happens when you starve an engine for fuel? Have you guys ever driven a car with a faulty fuel pump? I have. The fuel pump's not giving enough gas to the engine. And the engine runs rough and it doesn't run good. And I was lucky to get home. The fuel pump was not putting out enough gas, just enough to keep it running. But I had to drive, I think, like 20 miles an hour, spitting and farting all the way home. You know, barely running until I got it home to where I could work on it. Put a new fuel pump in it. But that's what an engine does. Well, right now, they're starving this engine, this economic engine. They're starving it right now. So when they open up the gas line again, the engine's going to run good. It's going to race right up like a Lamborghini. When it gets that gas back again. That gas is money. When they pour that money back into the system. But that's going to put us into the acceleration phase because the inflation we already have is going to take off again, but in a bigger way than ever before. And that's going to lead right directly toward the actual hyperinflation. And the hyperinflation is what's going to put us in this situation where the whole world is going to become like what we experienced here when the hurricane hit. It's going to be a financial hurricane. It's going to take out everything. Take out telecommunications, take out everything. And you're going to be on your own. And even if you've prepared for it, you might not be safe. Because like I say, you know, I mean, there's so many extenuating circumstances that can happen. But if you've prepared for it, you're a hell of a lot better off than the people who haven't prepared for it because they're going to be in duck soup. you know, and there's going to be an awful lot of people who haven't prepared at all for it. Well, you might be asking now, how long do you think this, when it hits, when this really hits hard and everything starts to shut down, how long before things go back to normal again? Well, this is very difficult to predict, but I think it's going to be like 4 to 6 months long while the system restructures. And on the other side of that restructuring, there's no other way out. Absolutely no other way out. They're not going to be able to go back to fiat any longer. They're going to have to make a money that's real money, that's backed by something of value, not backed by just promises like the money we have now. And this is the biggest mistake. 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, was the biggest mistake ever in the history of the world. It's going to cost more human lives ultimately, because it's going to lead to this ultimate end of days crisis. I mean, that's if something else doesn't come along ahead of this and take us out like an asteroid. You know, NASA just sent up a missile, a rocket, into an asteroid called, what was the name of it? Anyway, it's a little asteroid moon that was going around another bigger asteroid. The bigger asteroid was 3/4 of a kilometer size. So 750 meters in diameter, the big one, the big asteroid. And it had a little moon that was like 170 meters in diameter, circling around it. They rammed that into the little moon. And an attempt to divert the trajectory of the little moon. I'm thinking that probably what they're thinking is by diverting the trajectory of the little moon, they're going to change the course or alter the course of the larger asteroid. And you know what I'm thinking to myself? Why would they spend $325 million just to do some sort of a test? I'm very suspicious of them. They say that these asteroids do not threaten Earth. But, I mean, if they did threaten Earth, would they tell you? Because a 750-meter sized asteroid would devastate about half of the Earth. And so, would they tell you? That's just what I'm saying. Would they tell you? Do you really think that they'd say, oh, by the way, we got this 750-meter sized asteroid that's going to hit blah, blah, blah when? The whole Earth would panic. They could never tell something like that. So they have to make up fake stories. I'm just suspicious of them, that's all. Maybe their whole story is true. You know, I mean, but I don't trust NASA as far as I could. I was going to say as far as you could throw them. That's an old saying, you know, they used to say about somebody. They say, I don't trust him farther than I could throw him. You know. Anyway, so there's been a lot going on in the world right now. The pipeline, the big gas pipeline that runs underneath the ocean, you know. They blew something blew 3 holes in it. I'm not going to say what or who. Don't know who. They say they suspect sabotage. Now, who could? It's not your typical person, let's just put it that way, that could blow up a pipeline that's down like hundreds of feet underneath the ocean. It makes me wonder, you know. But the thing is there's also these big cables that run across the Atlantic that carry our internet service. These big, thick cables. You know. Just a second, guys. Big, thick cables that run across the ocean. That carry our internet. Well, anybody that could blow holes in those, I'm just saying, anybody or anything that could blow holes in Nord Stream 2 could also sever those cables that carry our internet service. And because we've made ourselves so dependent on internet for everything, we would be totally messed up. If that were to happen. Just saying if. We live in a very troubled world, and I've always hated the idea of them going gung-ho into this new tech so fast without testing it and without putting in redundant systems in place in case of failure. And becoming so reliant upon it so fast. We've moved too fast. We stepped forward too fast without saying, hey, we got a stable running system here. Everybody uses cash. There is no cell phones. Say you had a system. Okay, go back to the 1970s, 1980s. No cell phones, no internets, no computers or everything else. We had a stable running system that was very impervious to natural disasters. This modern system we've created is totally reliant upon these new technologies, and they just go. God, poof, the first little thing. And the first time you guys would get caught sitting in the dark and your cell phone doesn't work, you're going to realize what I'm saying is true. You'll say, oh, I should have listened to Glenn. I should have bought myself a little battery-operated radio that runs that has all the bands on it, not just AM, FM. That I could have listened to tonight. You're going to be laying there in the dark. You won't even have a flashlight. Or if you do, you only have one battery for it, and you'd be running out. Your car will run out of gas. Because that's what everybody does. They drive, trying to find out what's going on. So you run your car out of gas, and you're just going to be sitting there with nothing to do in the evening, staring at the stars and wondering how you're going to get out of this mess. You got no food, got no water. This is what my channel is for here, because this is coming. And for me, the preps that I've made really come in handy for me. Because you never know when disaster's going to come. Might not come in the form of a nukes or whatever, or in the form of the currency crisis. It might be a natural disaster like this, and you've got to get ready for it. You got to say, hey, what am I going to be doing when I'm on my own? And there ain't no emergency services going to come help me. Because they can't even get in because the road's tore in half. Or they haven't got fuel. How am I going to feed myself? How am I going to keep a dry bed over myself? How am I going to, Here's another little tip. Amazon, the radios. One tip I'm giving you guys. Another little tip is cards. Buy several packs of cards. And get yourself an old Monopoly board or something. You can get one at a garage sale someplace. And a few board games. Candles are great to have. But you got to be careful with candles. Never leave them unattended. There's so many things, but one of the things that I'm going to give you guys, and I told you guys I'm going to give you a little tip, is I know you all got your bed in your bedroom. Okay? But also have maybe either a blow-up mattress or a mattress roll for emergencies. Because your bed in your bedroom might be too big to move around. And it might get all full of glass or something. Whatever's happening could blow up so big it could shatter your windows. Maybe glass, little fragments of glass all in your bed. And then what are you going to do? Well, you can go you can go grab your mattress roll. A piece of foam rubber that's all rolled up with a rope. And keep it in the closet. This an extra little thing you can have, and something to sleep on. It's easy to move, or a little blow-up mattress, a little inflatable mattress. Unless you want to be sleeping on a hard rocks or whatever. underneath you. Because you might be forced straight. They've made our world so insecure now. We've lost all security. We don't have any security anymore. And these are these world leaders we have. We haven't paid attention to what they're doing enough. And how they're slowly taking away our security, bit by bit. And we're going to pay for it ultimately in the end. But anyway, I'm glad to be back here with you guys, you know. I mean, I wanted to get on the air. I just got everything up and getting it running and everything. I wanted to get on the air. I haven't even had a chance to shave yet. Well, I got a battery shaver, and I'm waiting for the battery to charge up. Anyway, glad to get on the air with you guys and glad to see you guys again. You know, thank you for tuning into my show. You guys are great. Really love my audience out there. And you guys have a great rest of the day. And we'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.